Welcome everyone to the Friday AIHM Wellness webinar. And we're gonna just take a few minutes as people start to come in to the space. We're really excited this week to have with us one of our members, our longtime members, and a fellow, Dr. Mark Arcuri is with us. He's gonna be speaking on Paradise Rediscovered Authenticity in a New World. And we're just really thrilled to have you here, Mark. Thanks for being with us here today. And this is our first webinar after our annual conference, which was just amazing this year. It was a virtual conference, and it's still online until November 1st. So if you would like to check out all the recordings, please let us know and join us. So we are the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine. AIHM is a global interprofessional integrative health association working to transform healthcare, body, mind, spirit, community, and planet. And we've been around since 1978, and we're just really thrilled to be bringing our community together. So again, I'd really like to welcome our special guest, Mark Arcuri. He is the author of A Life Aligned, The Journey to Allowing the Magic in Your Life. He is faculty in the Psychology Behavioral Health Leadership program at Walden University. He's a coach and therapist, and he's a current AIHM fellow in cohort 9. So Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much, Tabby. Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna share my screen without disconnecting myself. And thank you, Jess. Thank you, April, Heather, everybody. And hopefully you can see that on your screen now. I'm so excited to be here. This is Paradise Rediscovered. Authenticity in the New World is a title of a new upcoming book that I've been working on for a very long time. This book was born in Maui, in Hawaii. And I thought last summer when I was back in Maui that I would complete the book, and I didn't. And little did I know there'd be a lot of material coming in the months to come that would actually help me complete this book. If there's anything that has helped me reconnect with my authenticity in the last several months, if not the last several years, it's COVID. And it's catapulted me forward in my journey, and I hope to share some of that with you today. So thank you so much for being here once again. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico today. And I know there are people here from Mexico and from other countries, from the US, and we're all involved right now in this collective experience. I think it's a perfect time to be looking at our own authenticity and looking at who we are in this world and in this new world. So Paradise Rediscovered was originally conceptualized as a book that was going to be a collection of short stories. And this was about 10 years ago, actually. So this book has been brewing for me for a very long time. A Life Aligned was published in 2008. And this came along just shortly after that when I went to Maui for the second time. And Maui was sort of a place for me that when I went the first time, it was a very tumultuous time in my life. The people I went with, the circumstances I went under, nothing really resonated with my authenticity in any good way as I look back. It's all good, right? But in any way that I'm happy about at that time. But I went back then about a year later and rediscovered Maui as if for the first time. So the title of the book was at that time, Paradise Rediscovered, going back to something old and experiencing it as if for the first time. And the subtitle at that time was New Lessons from Old Teachers. And Paradise Rediscovered, Maui, was going to be one of the featured stories in that book. That all went out the window over the years as I sort of went on this journey of authenticity, learned more about myself, and decided to write a book that was very different. And that would be more of a book that brought together my experiences as I was growing up, as I was becoming an adult, going through adulthood now at 59 years old, which is unbelievable to me. The challenges I've had and how those challenges have defined my authentic path and helped me redefine myself as if for the first time. So that's what Rediscovered really is about, that I'm discovering something, but it's as if I'm going back and discovering something that really was there all the time, but I wasn't in touch with. So just a little bit of background where people are getting settled here. This is me. This is me in Rome. This is me to prove that my hair isn't always like this, but that's another shout out to COVID. Superimposed on a picture in Maui taken last summer when I thought I was going to be finishing this book. So that's me in Rome, superimposed on Maui, small world. And this workshop was supposed to be presented this past summer, shortly after that, in Santa Fe, New Mexico here as a 6-hour full-day workshop, experiential, hands-on. The material that I'll be sharing with you today, we were going to take very slowly and really go through this journey together. Didn't happen, so I'm really excited though to be able to share it with you for the first time ever anywhere, to go through the material in sort of an outline form, but getting into some detail. But what I am going to do is finish up the hour with some very specific things that I will go through with you and that you can take and you can do on your own after we finish up today. Some exercises that you can sort of use to begin conceptualizing your journey to authenticity. And then you can certainly reach out to me anytime you like, and I'm happy to chat or email, even get airplanes going over and take you further on that journey if you would like to go. On that note, it is the Campbell's condensed soup version of Paradise Rediscovered. So what I'd like to invite you to do to start, this is a slide that you do not need to read. I wanted to include it because when we finish today, Jess is going to be sending out this PowerPoint presentation to you, along with the handouts that will go along with the material at the end of the hour. But I'd like to go through this with you and let you just sort of sit back and begin to prepare you for this journey and have you reconnect with something that I think is really important that we'll leave once we finish this and go back to in about 40, 45 minutes or so. So if you'd like to sit back and just get comfortable, I know some of you are on your lunch hour, may not be in a place that you can just close your eyes, but if you can do that, perhaps close your eyes, get in a comfortable position, and just listen to my voice and listen to me run through this just for a moment and kind of set the tone and ask you to bring something to mind that I think will be very useful as we go forward in the hour. And basically what I'm asking you to do is to look back at your experiences and how they have prepared you to do the work that many of you, and really all of you, regardless of what you do with yourself in your day, personally and professionally, but preparing yourself to do the work that you're doing now, which is being a force of change. And we need that more than anything in the world right now. So I invite you, if you can, again, to close your eyes, if that's comfortable, and just relax. And if your eyes aren't closed, if you can perhaps fixate on an object or an image that you find relaxing, that might be helpful as well. And just think for a moment of a time when you were younger, any time at all, as far back as you might remember. Doesn't matter if you remember when that is. And try to think of an early memory of something that really, really bothered you. What was it that really, really gnawed at you in your thoughts when you were young? I know what mine was, and I'll share that with you later on when we come back to this. But maybe it was a problem that you just couldn't solve, even though you were so young. You knew you couldn't solve it. Maybe it was something in your awareness of things around you. Or maybe even something of you that just didn't make sense. Something persistent. Maybe you found some resolution by now in your life, or maybe not. Either way is okay. Just bring whatever that might be to your mind now. Spend a moment with it, no judgment, just honor it. And whatever that was, whether it was a thought, an image of a person, an image of a place, a thing, I invite you to just hold that with you now as we go forward. And we'll come back to it later in a way that I hope will be very meaningful to you. So when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, feel free to come on back. And let's just define for a moment what is authenticity. So the first thing I did, of course, was I went to Google, like we all do, right? The first thing that came up was a dictionary definition of authenticity, dictionary ease. So you've got a bunch of them on the screen. One of them really stuck out for me. Number 3, true to one's own personality, spirit, or characteristics. And for me, that conceptualizes much of what authenticity is. I love this quote that you can see up at the top. kind of like an ordinary moving into the extraordinary, going through darkness to light. And in doing that, coming to see your own personality and your spirit and your characteristics. So the next thing I did, like a good academic, I went to Wikipedia. Wikimedia. They're getting better. I remember the days when we could never use Wikipedia in an academic paper. Things are getting a little bit more lax in certain situations, but the Wikipedia definition for authenticity is actually pretty interesting, and I think it's pretty on target. And they say, and the reference is at the bottom, it's not at the back with the other references. It's a concept. Authenticity is a concept in psychology and existential psychiatry, existentialist philosophy, and aesthetics. That's a mouthful. In existentialism, authenticity is the degree to which a person's actions are congruent with his or her beliefs and desires. So that's required. You've got to know your beliefs and desires, despite, and this is my emphasis, despite external pressures to conformity. So the degree to which a person's actions are congruent with his or her beliefs and desires, despite external pressures to conformity. And I think that's just beautifully said. And Anna Quinlan said, the thing that is really hard and really amazing is giving up on being perfect and beginning the work of becoming yourself. And this is right here where it is. So I've kind of taken a collection of ideas that I've developed over the decades working with clients in my own life, as I mentioned before, my experiences in Maui and elsewhere, growing up, patients in psychotherapy, clients in coaching, and kind of put together this picture of what I think today are the essential elements of authenticity. So the first thing that I've come to know, at least as I see it, is that authenticity is not a thing. It's not something we can go out and grab. It's an experience that we have. It's an experience that we take in from the world around us, but it's also an experience that we give to the world around us. So it's a two-way street. It's an experience. Authenticity, I believe, is also soul informed. It's an essence from within that transcends and permeates everything real. Remembering that real is what our consciousness constructs. So Roberto Assagioli said consciousness creates reality, and I believe, a good Italian man, he was right on, that consciousness creates our reality. But what's authentic comes from our soul, not from our consciousness. So it's the soul devoid of the imprint of others. It's our personal connection to source, to whatever you want to call it. So if we can move our authenticity to a place where it's informing our consciousness, then our reality can change as well. And I'll mention that again in a few minutes. So authenticity is a soul-informed place within us or experience. It's also, though, as personal as that may be, it's also a universal and it's a collective experience. We come to the place where we understand that the self equals the other and that the other equals the self. It's recognition of oneness. So as much as it's a personal experience, we're still embodying a collective soul, if you will, within us. And that's a critical piece of authenticity as I see it. I also think it remains inherently the same as we go through life. That we may change, our expression of it may change, but when we get to the core elements of what it is, which we'll be doing at the end of this hour, we'll find that those core values don't change. It's sort of like we used to think of a personality that was unchangeable. We don't think that as much anymore. But certainly our core value set of who we are doesn't change very much. And when we discover it or rediscover it, we often recognize it. It seems very familiar to us. It's also a meaningful experience. There are lots of things in life that are meaningful, but I think authenticity, when we're connected to it and we're having experiences from that place, it's meaningful. It just exudes meaning and overflows. And by virtue of that, we know we're on purpose. There's no question about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And as Joseph Campbell said, the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. And that's exactly what authenticity is for me. So Paradise Rediscovered, as I mentioned earlier, is a journey. And it's a journey back to something that we may be discovering, thinking that we're discovering it for the first time. So the journey starts wherever you want to say it starts. For purposes of our discussion, I'm going to say it starts when we're born. And I certainly believe it starts way before that, whether it's in utero, whether it's in the cosmos before, when we're connected to source, wherever you think it starts, we begin somewhere and we come into this world as this being that is fully connected to who we are. We have the purest knowing of who we are at that point. Before we take that first breath outside, we are just manifesting perfection. We're connected to our source. We're created in that image. Maybe depending on the circumstances of that birth process, we may be intervened with a little bit sooner in some cases than others. But if nothing else, the moment that we're born, before we take that first breath, we are the absolute purest essence of knowing who we are. Wayne Dyer in the movie The Shift, which is a fantastic movie if you have 2+ hours, talks about the perfection as being completely devoid of ego. And that's a whole nother discussion of whether we should be devoid of ego or not. But we're the purest discussion of, purest representation of source. And then the people come into our life. We get into this step 2 of our journey. Our caretakers and our world take over. And what Wayne Dyer says is that ego stands for edge God out. So they come in and they say, great job, as he says it in the movie. Perfect. This baby is just amazing. We'll take over from here. Thank you. And they do. And they take over and they begin to imprint for us their perspectives on the world and what they believe that we need to know. Usually not malicious, sometimes could be, depending on your circumstances and the people in your life at that time. But they begin to tell us, this is who you are. This is what to believe. This is how to act. This is what to want. And ultimately, this is what you're supposed to become. And we're young. We don't have the ability, the brain development and the ego development and the conscious development at that time to really begin to question those things. And we take it in like a sponge. And whether it's Aristotle or the Jesuits who said, give me a child until he is 7 and I'll show you the man. We're a sponge at that time. We're at the mercy of others' perceptions and fears and hopes and dreams and their experiences and their solutions to the challenges in their lives. And those things work very well in a situation where they're basically carrying those things out for us before we're able to do those on our own. But then we begin to get older and we begin to develop a sense of our place in the world and we begin to encounter challenges. And I think that's because we begin to get a glimpse, just a small glimpse that we don't yet understand, that the toolkit that we've been given and the recipe that we've been given may not in fact make sense. There may be something about it that doesn't resonate with us. We don't really understand it that way at that time, but there's just this disconnect or a misalignment, I guess is one way to say it. So we feel ill-equipped to navigate the journey that we're on. We don't know what to do. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And I believe this is exactly where that begins. We start that journey of differentiating from these people that for benevolent reasons, I guess is the word, tried to show us the way, a way that worked for them. And we begin to see that it may not work very well for us. So we continue on the journey. Piaget says, age 11, we begin to think a little bit more coherently and completely. He calls it the formal operation stage that he says continues on through adulthood, into adulthood at least, and through adulthood. Age 11, we begin to use this existing knowledge, some of which we've been given, some of which we are getting but don't yet understand, because remember the Jesuits and Aristotle said that it's only up until about age 7 that we're the sponge, but things begin to shift. So for a good 4 years, between 7 and 11, if you want to take those dates, we've got a lot of stuff brewing that we're trying to put together. We've got existing knowledge. We've got some knowledge that we're gaining. We're trying to understand the world around us, and we begin, according to Piaget, to create new theories about the world with all of this information that we have. And from those new theories, we then begin to make predictions about what will happen in the future. So we begin to understand that our actions may indeed have consequences or reactions, good or not so good. We begin to put that together and to understand it. And as Cummings says, it takes courage to grow up and become who we really are. We go into this process of trial and error. We learn what works best for us. Sometimes that's exactly what worked best for the people that taught us those things. Sometimes it's not, so we have to discover our own ways in the world. And eventually, through that process, we reconnect with our own truths. And we know that we've done that when we start to experience things and do things based on actions and reactions and thinking, excuse me, that resonate with us, that feel good, they feel aligned. And when we've done that, we've rediscovered who we really are. I love the metaphor of Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, who, you know, she had the shoes on, she had the slippers, whatever they were, shoes, the red shoes. When she blew away in the tornado, they were there. Yet once she got where she went, she had to go through all of this journey and all of these trials and tribulations and figure out how to get back home. And when she finally went through all of that and learned to trust her inner truth, she realized that all she had to do was click her heels and she was home. But she had those heels to click the whole time, but she had to learn to reconnect with the power that she held. I call that place our paradise because it's from whence we came, it's to where we go, and I can't think of a better paradise to have. So we're back at Paradise Rediscovered. So why should you care? Well, the first thing I say is, let's change that to why might you care? Because as we might remember from Albert Ellis, what happens when we should on ourselves? We got to take that word out of our vocabulary. So should doesn't exist anymore. Why might you care? Why might you care about reconnecting with your authenticity? Well, first, I think there's a deep satisfaction when we do it. It's been my experience and the experience of a lot of people I know, whether they're clients or not. There's a satisfaction in finding that you're connected to this personal and collective soul, that there's something greater than you out there. And not only is there something greater, but as you go on this journey, you come to the place where you realize that that something greater is actually also inside you, that they're one and the same. And that's the oneness that we come to understand and embrace and feel. So you're in a position now of not only connecting to the personal and collective soul, but you're able to connect with that greater sense of what's out there within you as well. And that's when you can really give it back to the universe around you, to the people around you. And that's where the meaning and the purpose comes in, that you've got the opportunity to touch people's lives, and knowing that you're touching those lives with the greatest energy that exists in our universe. And that's an amazing sense of purpose to have, I think far greater than any other that we might be able to come up with that's important to us, but sort of pales alongside the meaning and the sense of connection that we have to this greater something. In addition to that, there's something called a life aligned. Yes, that's the title of my book, and I have it here. If anybody would like a copy of this book in e-format, I would love to send it to you. Just reply with an email address, and I'll send you a coupon code to get the ebook in whatever format you like. And I think I have a limited number. In fact, I'm sure I do have a limited number of audiobooks available as well. And on Amazon, I'm pretty sure right now you can also download it free as an ebook in your Amazon Prime account. But however you can get it, I'm happy to make sure that you get it. But it's about this alignment in our life. When we're connected with our authenticity, tongue twister as it is, we're aligned with who we are. So we become privy to this state of allowing rather than a state of doing. So listen to Lao Tzu, I think, who said that we let it be done to us rather than us trying to do it. And in fact, in the Life Aligned journey, which is in the book, we talk about getting away from that place of trying to accomplish things in the way that we think that they should be accomplished, and getting to the place where we can allow them to just happen because we've put ourselves in a place in our life that's perfectly aligned with having whatever it is that we're trying to have. So the work is really not about creating the manifestation. It's about creating a life that's consistent with the manifestation and letting the manifestation come in. So we accomplish great things that might otherwise elude us, and our dreams can become a reality as if by magic. To take it on a more scientific level, Csikszentmihalyi and Csikszentmihalyi, husband and wife, developed back in the 70s something that they called the theory of optimal flow. And they theorized and have shown in many ways since that we've got this flow channel that we can get into in life. And I like to think of it maybe as being in the jet stream on an airplane when you get back from Hawaii like 2 hours before you're supposed to, because you've gotten on that jet stream that carries the airplane so much faster than it could go on its own. But you've got this flow channel, and it's dependent on two things. One is the degree of challenge in your life, and one is the skill and the confidence level that you perceive having related to those challenges. So when challenges are really high, and we feel like we don't have the skill or the confidence to meet those challenges, we get into this place of panic and anxiety. So we're definitely not aligned with what's going on around us. We've got to adjust something in order to get back into this flow channel. We can try to decrease our challenges if that's possible, or we can acquire the skills that we need to meet those challenges. If we are in a position where we have lots of skills and confidence in our abilities, but are really in a place, perhaps in a career, where we don't have the challenges that we'd like to have, we get bored. And that's where depression comes in as well. So that's a real danger, and we don't want that to happen. And that's also a place where we're misaligned with the world that's going on around us. So we've got to make some changes and figure out how we can better understand how to meet that flow requirement of balancing our challenges and our confidence level by making some changes. So that's the second thing that I think is really important about being in that authentic place, because we are aligned. Our challenges will be balanced with our skills and abilities, and we won't have to worry so much about making those changes unless we want to grow in some way, in which case it's good to kind of shake things up a little bit. And finally, reduced stress. As you can imagine, if you're being authentic to who you are, if you're feeling deeply satisfied and connected, if your life is aligned in many ways and you just feel like things are flowing along and you're in a really good place, you're going to feel less stress. And what do we know as healthcare practitioners and other people who are aware of what's going on in the world? When we are in a place of reduced stress, things begin to change around us. We see less morbidity, less illness, because we're not subject to all of those stress-related illnesses that we're subject to when we're under high stress. We see less mortality from things that may be premature mortality related to the morbidity that's related to the stress that we typically feel. There's more social ease. People aren't so on edge all the time. They're feeling pretty good. They're not so combative and fighting and feeling like they have to have their point understood by everyone in order to feel that they have any self-worth, as opposed to social dis-ease. So physical dis-ease is less, social dis-ease is less. Leads to increased productivity, increased production, has vast economic consequences, good consequences. Our quality of life is better. So those are just some of the things that I believe are the result of living a life that's authentic. So what stands in your way? Well, I counted 5 things off the top of my head when I was putting the slide together. And these are not the only 5 things, but I think they're pretty broad and conceptualized or encompass a lot of what is out there. One of the things, big things that gets in the way of authenticity is expectations, and especially expectations that are imposed by others. So we indwell these things that people teach us when we're younger, and even when we're older. We join clubs, we tend to take on their characteristics or religions or or political parties. And I'm not bashing any of those things. They have a place in the world. But if we begin to define ourselves only in their eyes, then we've taken on expectations and beliefs and loyalties that may not be our own. And if that's the case, that creates stress, and that stands in the way of us really connecting with our authentic core. So the expectations imposed by others or by other institutions is a big one. Beliefs that aren't necessarily yours, that's another big one. Taking on these beliefs and coming to the place where you begin to believe them because other people have said to believe them without asking yourself if they really resonate with you. And we'll talk in a few minutes about ways to do that, to discern that for yourself. Loyalties, which I define as mistaken things that we mistake for our wants. So I've done a lot of work in Native communities over the years. And one of the things in behavioral health that we dealt with was addictions. And one of the most difficult aspects of sobriety for the community members that I worked with was becoming sober in a community or a family that was still using. And that may make sense, of course. People around you were doing it, it's very difficult not to do it. But what undermined so much of that for these people was the sense of loyalty that they felt, or in this case, the disloyalty that they felt by making changes that would make them appear different from the people around them. So going to rehab and doing really well, but then going back to the community and starting to use again because they got back into the community norm. Or they went to rehab and got sober and realized that they couldn't go back to their community. So they didn't go back to the community, but then felt outcasted by the community. So they were being disloyal, and it made the recovery journey so much more difficult. And we all do that. We all have examples in our life where we do things, make decisions based on what we believe other people are expecting of us. And we've come to believe that those are the things that we really want. So we need to take a look at those. Settling for anything, whatever it is, anything that we settle for is automatically going to be getting away from your authenticity, unless by some magic in the end, it turns out that what you settled for was exactly what you wanted anyway. And it could happen, I guess, but chances are it doesn't. And finally, number 5 on my list anyway, and you may have more, is just pressure in general, social pressure, other pressure. Any kind of pressure that you are responding to is automatically putting itself between you and authenticity. So what are some of the things that are inconsistent with authenticity? I think these are really important to mention because sometimes they're the clues, they're the symptoms that we can see that tell us that either we're being inauthentic or there are inauthentic things going on around us. And the first one on the list, my list anyway, and of course these are all my biases, but social injustice. If there's social injustice going on in the community, then by definition, in my book, that community is not functioning from a place of its authenticity. Can't happen. And people who are buying into that social injustice and perpetuating it, or even seeing it and not doing anything about it, there's a disconnection from authenticity there. The same thing with health inequity. If healthcare is not available in your community, there's something wrong in the community that's allowing that to happen, that is disconnected from the authentic version of what that community could be. And by the same token, the people that perpetuate that are being inauthentic. Economic disparities, same thing, big symptom of inauthenticity, of disconnection. Cultural ignorance and intolerance. And here in the US anyway, in many places in the world, us versus them of any kind, no matter how it's convincingly rationalized, can't exist in an authentic world because we're connected to the oneness. Naomi Remen said healing may not be so much about getting better as about letting go of everything that isn't you, all the expectations, all of the beliefs, and becoming who you are. For those of you who know Naomi Redmond, I'm sure you think she's like a goddess. If you don't know her, pick up her books, Kitchen Table Wisdom, My Grandfather's Blessings, amazing, amazing stories that she's collected over the years as a physician. And she was the one that brought spirituality back into medicine in the curricula. And of course, as we learned this weekend, we had Norm Shealy in the conference and Gladys McCary, who were the people that brought spirituality into medicine for the rest of us that were not in medical training. Amazing, amazing people all. So how do you get there? And this is where I want to go through some experiences, or I should say exercises with you, experiences that you can do on your own when we finish. First, Marcus Aurelius, your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought, for the human spirit is colored by such impressions. And in fact, who was it? William James, the father of psychology, said the same thing pretty much 100 years ago. Aurelius, I don't know when he said this, but it was a lot more than that. What we hold in our mind shapes everything. So the first thing I want to ask you to do is to go back where we began today and go back to the image, whatever it was that you were holding in the exercise that we started with. And that's a great starting place. And you can go back to this PowerPoint after. You'll be getting it again in an email after we finish. And you can go through the exercise on your own if you need to. But whatever that was, start with that and reconnect with its energy. And just real quickly to say what mine was, and I truly, 59 years, and I only put this together yesterday, and some of it this morning when I was thinking more about this exercise. But what I went back to when I was thinking about it yesterday was this anxiety that I felt as a kid. And I can't remember how old I was, and it doesn't matter, but I was young, so it had to be in the 60s. And I remember my parents were having a party downstairs, and in the holidays, the winter holidays, they often had several parties over the course of a couple of weeks. And they had just like 2 or 3 couples at a time to make it small and more intimate. And I remember going to bed one night and I had these chest pains, and I was a kid. What do I know from chest pains? I had chest pains, and these chest pains made me feel like I was dying. And I was really upset. I don't know if I was crying loudly enough that my parents heard me, or if I went downstairs to reach out to them. But one of them, I don't remember which, came up and talked to me and said, "Oh, they're just growing pains." And I remember when I was young, every time we went to the doctor, they would say it's growing pains. And probably was because I'm still here. But I think as I began to put things together this morning, thinking about it again, was that it was growing pains. But what was growing within me was this increasing feeling, literally in my body, that something wasn't right, that I was outgrowing myself even at that young age. Maybe I was getting ideas about things. I don't know. It could have been ideas about my sexuality and knowing that I was different from everybody around me as far as I knew. If I had only known then what I know now, it wasn't so different from a lot of people, but as far as I knew, or just having ideas that maybe didn't resonate with people around me, I don't know. But it was so powerful, and I only am understanding it now by going back to that image. And that's what I'm suggesting you might want to do. And then asking yourself, what is the first, if you're doing it for the first time, or the next step, if you considered it before, that you can take to honor whatever it was that consumed you so persistently when you were young, and that felt so important. To go back and learn from it, and even ask it perhaps what it was there to teach you. Because I guarantee whatever it was an authentic part of you that at the time you probably didn't even know existed or didn't know what it was in any case. So that's why I asked you to do the exercise at the beginning, to begin that process. I think it's a great one to start with. So the second one is to be mindful of your mind, as Marcus Aurelius said. As humans, we're gifted with this ability to control our thoughts, but too many of us let our thoughts control us. It's the opposite, because again, we think somehow that what we're conscious of that's creating a reality and then reinforcing our consciousness is who we are, but it's really not. When our consciousness is controlled by our soul, then we can say that our reality represents our authenticity. And if there's a disconnect in any way, we're going to go out and make some changes so that it does. Another one that I love is muscle testing, applied kinesiology. I have 2 resources here, which are great to take a look at. All the references are at the end of the PowerPoint. Receiving messages from your body or from your divine mind, depending on what you, the perspective you're coming from. So the Gallo reference is a chapter from a book actually on energy techniques. And I think it's a 16-page chapter. And if you don't have access to that when you try to find it, if you do, let me know, happy to send it to you. Walden, where I teach, has a wonderful library. AIHM has an amazing connection to University of Western States and their library. They both have this. But if you can't access it, let me know. I'm happy to send it to you. 11 is a web page that's also at the end of the PowerPoint. And what I like about it, it's more of a layperson's of what muscle testing is and how to use it. And there's, I think, a 7-minute video about that. So it's a great, great look if you want to check it out. So what I want to spend the next few minutes on, just to give you an idea of where we're at and things that you can do more substantially even as you move forward. And again, keeping in mind Joseph Campbell, who I absolutely love, if you haven't figured that out, find a place where there is joy, and the joy will burn out the pain. And I believe, again, the joy is your authenticity that is burning out all of the inauthenticity that's around you. So I'd like to take a look first at the circle of life. And I called it a mind map years ago, and a client reframed it as the circle of life, and I like that. You're going to get this in your handout, so no need to be reading what I'm going to show you, but I just want to show you real quickly what that looks like, and I'm assuming you can see that on the screen. Yeah? Okay. So these are just 2 pages of directions.
We can't
no need to
see
worry.
that on the screen, Mark. We only see your PowerPoint if you're sharing something else, because that's all you're sharing right now, just FYI.
Oh, are you okay if I switch and share my full screen?
Yep, that's fine if you need to.
All right, my mistake. I'm sorry about that. So let me go back to my desktop. All right, so now you should be able to see this on the front of the screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. So the first 2 pages here are simply instructions. Don't worry about that, I'll walk you through it right now. But what I want to show you most significantly is here is the circle, which I drew as a cloud. And what I ask you to do is, let's go to the final product here so you can see what it looks like, because we're going to go through it pretty quickly. And you identify some words that feel to you like they are your core values. So you sit, you meditate, you do whatever it is that you do to kind of connect to your inner self and to your soul. And the list of words, I recommend maybe about 10 words if you can, and list those words in the center of your circle or your cloud. And those words represent core values that you hold that either you're expressing in your life now, or values that you may aspire to because you see them in other people that you hold in reverence. And they're elements that really do speak to your authenticity and who you are on that soul level. And then you go around, and on the spokes, which again are not filled out here, on the spokes you list all of the different aspects of your life, the pieces of your pie and who you are. Here's the ones that I suggest. Some of them may not apply to you. You may combine some and have perhaps physical health and mental health in one. And you'll go through, put all the pieces of the pie represented on a spoke as you choose to do that. And then you begin to look at each of those aspects in relation, in the context to the core values that you've placed in the middle. And the way that you use it is by taking, for instance, physical health and asking yourself, in my physical health as I'm experiencing it today, how well represented are all these core values in that aspect of my life? And if they're not, or to the degree that they're not, then you can ask yourself, well, how can I correct that? How can I rebalance it? How can I feel more inspired, perhaps, in my physical health if I'm not feeling that right now? Now, it may be that in any given aspect, you may not be able to express all of these core values in that aspect. And if that's fine, you can just leave it out. There's no need to worry about that. But if there are important core values here that you are not expressing in a particular area of your life, you can ask yourself the question, how can I bring that in? List a couple of things that you can do to rebalance that, and then set the intention in the next couple of days that that's what you will do. This is a fantastic, it's probably the most powerful, and I think the exercise that my clients love the most is that they can take this mind map, they can, circle of life, they can use it, they can redo it at times. I have people get really overly OCD about how they do it, and I think it takes away from the experience, but not for them. Where you can begin to use it on a daily basis to take a look at how you're doing in different parts of your life, or maybe on a weekly basis, take one aspect of your life and begin to compare it to your core values and how authentic you're being in that part of your life. So I highly, highly recommend that you do that. And again, you'll get this handout where you can do that on your own. The next one is a personal mission statement. And this is a fun exercise. If you do the circle of life, you're already halfway finished. As you can see, number one, you've got choose 4 or 5 words above, which is out of the 10 or so, or however many you may have in your circle. So you choose 4 or 5 words, and let me pull that on the screen now and make it a bit bigger. And you pull 4 or 5 words off that list that you're going to use to construct personal mission statement. The way that you choose these words is really up to you, but they should be words that, there's that word should again, they could be words, they might be words that for whatever reason for you resonate above and beyond the others. It doesn't mean the others are not core values, but for some reason, these speak even more loudly to you. You can use muscle testing maybe, do the simple technique on the different words compared to each other and see which one gives you a better read so you can test their energy. But come up with 4 or 5 at the most. You don't want more than that, because what you're going to do, as you can see down here, is take those words and put them together into a sentence with filler words around them so that you can make a sentence that makes sense. And I suggest up in the instructions that you begin the sentence with the I am statement, the all-powerful I am. So I wrote in this particular case, I am open-minded, first word, and treat others with respect, always seeking to guide others in how to achieve the greatest harmony and balance in their lives. And I like to add, and so it is. Take this mission statement and you broadcast it to the universe. You put it on your email signature, put it on your business card if we ever get to give business cards to people, unless they're virtual business cards again. Put it on your brochures, put it on your web page, put it on sticky notes around the house, any place that you want to put the energy out that this, in this moment, is who I am. Incredibly powerful and deceptively challenging, because what you're going to find is that as you do it, especially when you put this out to other people, it can be really hard to do. The judgments come in. Oh, what are they going to think of me if I put that out there? They're going to think I'm narcissistic. They're going to think I'm full of myself. In another way, they're going to think that I'm trying to be better than other people. Those are your demons. Those are your dragons, as Joseph Campbell calls them. That's what you have to overcome to fully live the authenticity that is you. So that's a personal mission statement. The final one, I'm not going to get into in detail at all, but I will show it to you. All of those are hyperlinked as well, but you will get them at the end of the session with your email. So these are the feet that go with the head in Rome. From the beginning slide, that's me again. When you're authentic to who you are, you're gifted with an authentic world. This is 8 days to authenticity. This is a little bit more of a program that you can go through. That's me in San Diego last Christmas, the last time I got to travel. So self-explanatory, one exercise every day for the first 7 days. Really easy, but make you think. And if you're not getting dizzy, I'll scroll to day 8. Day 8 brings it together with another exercise that asks you to go back and to look at everything from days 1 through 7, put them into a place where you can look at them all at once, and then write them into a story that is a story of your authentic life. I do have this available as an e-course as well. And if anyone would like to send me an email, I'm happy to give you a coupon code to access that free on my website. The only difference is that there's a video that was culled from a Facebook Live series I did last year We did 8 days to authenticity in 8 weeks. We did it once a week. And, but those 15-minute or so videos are incorporated in. So if you'd like to have that visual as well, I'd be happy to give you that. So I know we're pretty much at the end of our time. You must be willing to get rid of the life that you've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us, Joseph Campbell. So what can we do once we rediscover our authenticity? Number one, live it. Live your authenticity. And in Joseph Campbell's words again, I don't believe people are looking for the meaning of life as much as they're looking for the experience of being alive. And isn't that what it's about? Use it to change the world. Barack Obama. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Respect the power of doing it. It's a philosophy of life, a practice. If you do this, something will change. What will change is that you will change. Your life will change. And if you can change you can perhaps change the world. Vivienne Westwood. And finally, never ever care what other people think, especially when you're putting out your mission statement. History shows us the people who end up changing the world, the great political, social, scientific, technological, artistic, even sports revolutionaries, are always nuts until they're right. And then they're geniuses. John Eliot. I want to sing like the birds sing, not worrying about who hears or what they think. And remember, we can't give what we don't have, and we can't have what we don't give. References. Thank you so much.
Mark, thank you. What a wonderful presentation and just a wonderful way to end our week. I mean, really inspiring and just so thoughtful around the exercise of, you know, really looking at our own, creating our words and our word cloud and our personal mission. I mean, I think more than ever during this time, you know, just to really reinstill hope and that centering for all of us. It's just so important. And just such a simple exercise is beautiful.
I agree. Thank you so much. I agree. I think it's so important. And, you know, we've got the time now, if nothing else. And I think we need to always make the time, but we've got the time and we can really lay a good foundation for living this, And that's really what it takes. One day at a time, of course. You know, there's a quote here, which I took off the screen, but I'll read it. It's on the last page of the slide from Tom Brokaw. It says, "You are educated. Your certification is in your degree. You may think of it as the ticket to a good life, but let me ask you to think of it as an alternative. Think of it as your ticket to change the world." And I think these exercises and investing that bit of time is sort of like getting the degree again. And it's your ticket to changing the world. And if we don't do that, then it's kind of for naught. We've got to change the world with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, just the holism of the system. And I think that that's also, just for those of you watching, we've got lots of people on Facebook watching as well. You know, really thinking about, we often in our lives think about one issue that we're having. You know, we get injured, we go to the doctor, we deal with that issue. And to really look at, like, what is my vision for each of these areas? And holistically, it just is a very lovely approach, and certainly one we value at AIHM.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. And to remember that all of those experiences are only little blips on the radar.
That's right.
You've got to, as you said, look at that holistic picture and see that nothing is insignificant, but nothing is so significant that it defines us.
Right. And then, you know, creating that pathway too of saying, you know, maybe here I do have what I'm looking for, and over here I don't yet. And really mapping that out is just another tool that, you know, just doesn't look at what we're not accomplishing, which I think also is, it can be easy, especially in this environment, to see and hear all the negative and all the stress and all, you know, in our world right now. It's easy to get that message. And so to really be able to look at yourself and give yourself that space, that
Yeah.
self-care.
Yeah, we need to go into ourselves. Absolutely. And again, in the spirit of oneness, if we go into ourselves, we're going into everything. We're going into everything around us as well. So we don't have to put our energy into all of that craziness as much as to put it into ourselves and bringing ourself back to a place of wholeness. And in knowing as we do that, we're also radiating that energy out and creating that healing in everything that's around us. Very, very powerful. And time again, if you try it, you'll see that it works.
So we do have a question from one of our attendees today. Dr. Rashida Ali is asking, can you please describe how the muscle testing works with the words and core values? Like, have you used them when doing the exercise?
Yeah, so a lot of times with muscle testing, you're basically just asking a yes, no question. You know, is this a decision that's good for me, or is the decision that's bad for me? So with the words, when trying to, I haven't actually tried doing it with the words. It just makes intuitive sense to me that it would work. And what I mean by that is that if you change the question with the muscle testing to, does this word resonate more with me than the other word? Or is this resonate, or is this word a more powerful way for me to use my authenticity than this word? So it's not saying the other word is not valuable. It's saying which one has a little bit more of a higher frequency, and using the muscle testing to determine that. Unless you have David Hawkins, right? Power versus force, and you understand the whole vibrational theory of words and what words are a higher vibration than the other. And that's complicated. It's amazing work. You know, anger is a much better place to be than depression from that perspective. But unless you have that perspective and understand the frequencies of words, you can use the muscle testing to kind of test them against each other and see which one resonates more for you in the response that you get. That's how I would recommend it. If there are other ideas, I'd love to hear them as well.
Yeah, that sounds like a great way to approach that. And, you know, could you speak a little bit more just about how, you know, with the pandemic and the changes that have happened over the last 6 months for all of us, you know, how have you shifted to online? How is that, you know, have you found any, I see that some of your courses, you know, now are available that way. And I just wanted to know if you've discovered any aha moments to that process.
Yes. One aha moment is actually that it was so easy for me to gravitate. I've done a lot of work online over the years anyway, but I've never done some of the work I'm doing now online, such as psychoeducational evaluations in my psychology practice. And I'm finding that they work and that the technology is supporting us. So that's one thing. But just in terms of connecting with people, what I find for me, for instance, over here behind me is a rose. And behind me here, I think this picture small is a fountain. And constructing things around me that I can see that are deeply meaningful to me, knowing that that energy kind of comes out of me and exudes into other people that I'm working with on the screen. So I mentioned in the bio in the beginning that my grandmother Rose is so much of my inspiration for my authenticity. And when I woke up this morning, it was 32 or 33 degrees here in Santa Fe. It's been pretty chilly. There was a rose blooming on the rose bush outside my window. And you know, that bush has bloomed twice already this season. Where this one came from, I have no idea. But I had to take it, and I knew she wouldn't mind me cutting it because it was going to probably die anyway tonight out there. But she's transitioned 15, 20 years ago, but more than that. But it was like a sign from the universe, noticing those things and bringing them into the work as I do them, even if I don't mention them to people. I have strong ties to Mexico, and the fountain that's next to me is from Mexico. It's one of the first things I brought back when I visited, and the piece of coral on top is actually from Maui. And so it has that significance. And then there are pictures on the wall. So that's how I've negotiated that. You know, I knew the technology. I've had people that could help me with the technology, but then I brought meaning and the energy into the online experience by just having things around me that are
That's
able to
such
do
a
that
great
for me.
point, Mark. And I mean, really actually creating that space and taking that extra time. You know, just like I love your colors and like, you know, it does really make a difference, especially, you know, for those of you who've moved to an, you know, from maybe an office to a home site. It's worth really taking that time and recreating your space. It's kind of like doing your mission and really creating space around who you are personally. So, so I just love that, those suggestions. And I'd say too, you know, we do have to wrap up, but I'd say that we've also found that. So, you know, we just had our first annual conference, which is usually in person, and it was all online, and it was so phenomenal. I mean, people were totally connected, and really like we facilitated all sorts of spaces where there was real incredible sharing and connection going on and learning. And so that I think is a really good tool for all of us to learn how to continue that, you know, as we move forward. Yeah. So Jess, if you could put the slides, and I'll just finish up. Again, I just really want to thank Mark Arcuri for this. Really was such an uplifting, perfect presentation this week, and all the resources, Mark. I really appreciate
Thank you so much.
You sharing that with the community. I do want to invite any of you who missed the live conference. You can actually still get into the platform and go into all the conversations. People are still chatting and still connecting, and we had attendance from over 38 countries. I mean, it was just absolutely brilliant, bringing together the integrative health community and really starting to build a global movement so that we can all work together to transform healthcare. So I really welcome you to come and check out the conference still. So what's next? We do the Monday meditations and weekly webinars every week. This coming week, we will have at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, Wendy Coulter leading our weekly meditation. We're just so thrilled to have her. And then next Friday, we'll be hosting a wellness webinar with Nisha Bhopal, who will be speaking on improving sleep in the time of coronavirus, an integrative approach. Our fellowship program is just starting a new cohort right now. So if you're one of those people who likes to jump in at the last minute, think about joining our fellowship. And of course, our global community. Please become a part of the community. Continue to access all of our free resources. You can come back and view and share and access any of the webinars and Monday meditations. They're on our YouTube channel, our Twitter, our Facebook page, all the different areas. We're AIHM Global, and it's all free. So please share it with your friends, your community, your family, and stay safe, be well, and we will see you next week. Thanks again, Mark.